ॐ अज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनच्छलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपः कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकं। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरोः श्रीयुतापदकमलं श्रीगुरून् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं सागरजातं सगणा रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनासहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधाकृष्णपादान् सहगणललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च हे कृष्णकरुणा सिन्धु दीनबन्धु जगत्पते गोपेशा गोपिकान्त राधाकान्त नमोऽस्तुते। तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। वंशकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। नमः ओम विष्णुपादाय कृष्ण स्वामी नामिने नमः ओम विष्णुपादाय कृष्ण प्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमति भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वती निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशकाल। संकृतिवाचालं पंगुं लंघयते गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे श्रीगुरुं दीनतारिणं परमानंद माधवं श्रीचैतन्य ईश्वरम्। हरि ओम तत्सत्। हरे कृष्ण। Thank you all for joining. Suyash Prabhu, nice to see you also. Back from Vrindavan. Hari Hari.
Sorry, I was unable in the last few lectures. I was traveling.
Oh, you are in Vrindavan. That is so wonderful.
Your mercy.
Hare Krishna. So, Suyash Prabhu did Govardhan Parikrama, visited Shri Vrindavan Dham. Very nice. So, you should, hopefully, you parade for all of us. The transcendental abode. Very good. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Prabhu. Nice to see you. So, we welcome everyone. So, our journey in the Gita actually moves on to the 4th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, which is entitled Jnana Yoga or Transcendental Knowledge. For those who are unfamiliar with the word transcendental, a very quick, simple meaning of the word transcendental. The word transcendental comes from the word transcend. Transcend means to go above and beyond. So transcendental means that which is above and beyond. Above and beyond what? Above and beyond the material realm, above and beyond the material energy, above and beyond Maya. And what is that which is beyond matter? It is the platform of the spiritual, relating to the soul, relating to the Lord, relating to devotion, devotional service, because all these things are beyond the purview of the material energy. That is why in very simple words, if you want to translate the words transcendental, you can replace it with a simple word spiritual. But again, you have to be clear. Spiritual, sometimes people think even material things they refer to by the term spiritual. But here when we talk about the word spiritual, we very clearly are referring to something which is beyond matter, beyond even the mind, beyond the intelligence, beyond the ahankar. And Krishna explains this very clearly in the 7th chapter, where he gives that very, very clearly. But nonetheless, suffice for now to understand that transcendental knowledge means spiritual knowledge, knowledge which is beyond and which can take us beyond. So by the end of the third chapter, Lord Krishna has already explained to Arjuna very beautifully. He has established and explained the principle of detached action. Selfless action which is dedicated for the cause of the Supreme. And he also emphasizes towards the later part of the third chapter that to be able to properly perform such detached action and spiritually dedicated action, it is very important to control the mind. Because if the mind is not controlled, what does a controlled mind mean? Controlled mind means one allows, or rather does not allow, the mind to follow the whims created by materialistic urges such as lust, anger, greed, to name a few. And Krishna emphasizes by saying it is lust which is that original problem. Because it is lust which later gets transformed either into greed or into anger, and which burns like a fire in the heart and which can never be satiated no matter how much one tries to enjoy. That lust is what takes one away from the spiritual path. So if you want to remain steadfast on the spiritual path, you must control lust. And I've had this experience many times that sometimes we discuss spiritual things with some people and they get so excited when you talk about it. They may have some faith also. They get so much excited. But when it comes to actually practicing spiritual life, 99% of people are unable to come down to practicing spiritual life. Why? Because when it comes to actually investing time and energy to practice, they are unable in their mind to make that determination to practice, because the mind will immediately say, hey, why you want to do japa? Why don't you watch this serial? Why don't you speak to this friend? Why don't we go here? Why don't we do that? So spiritual life continuously gets into a postpone mode because lust, anger, greed. Lust actually refers to the entire gamut of strong material desires. Lust is not just about attraction between the male and female. In the broadest sense, lust is that intense desire to enjoy. It could be any of the senses. It could be the mind. Any kind of materialistic enjoyment. So people are so distracted. And that is why if one is not able to control this lust, very easily the mind will get distracted. Because in our current condition stage, our attraction to God is so small. And our attraction to matter is so huge. So when there is a fight, who is going to win? Obviously, the mind will win. Unless the mind is controlled by spiritual intelligence. And that is what Krishna says. Control your mind with spiritual intelligence by recollecting the instructions of the scriptures, by developing spiritual strength. Then one can say no to the whims of the mind, and gradually, by practicing spiritual life, initially one may falter again and again, but by repeated practice, one will eventually come to the point of steady practice. And that steady practice, scripture says, possible only when one has, to a great extent, overcome lust, anger, greed. That is known as the stage of nishtha, the stage of steady practice. So anyone whom we see practicing spiritual life very steadily and not being distracted and diverted by the attractions of the material world, they may not be 100% there. They are generally not distracted. They are able to do their sadhana regularly every day. They are able to say no to the wrong things and the distractions. That is an indication that one has become purified to some extent, and that by that virtue of that purification, one is able to control one's mind and senses in such a way that one is able to remain on the highway of spiritual progress. One doesn't take a detour into the jungle of material enjoyment. Remain on the highway, don't take a detour. So summarily, Krishna says, Arjun, the yoga process is essentially a process on which there are two tracks. Just like on a train rail, there are two tracks, right? What are the two tracks? One track is the track of developing one's attraction to Krishna by dedicating the fruits of our activity to Him, by serving Him, and so many other spiritual processes which are aimed at pleasing Him and serving Him. And the other track represents a serious effort to control the mind and senses. So one is about developing attraction, and the other path is about detachment. So attachment to Krishna and detachment from matter are these two tracks, and both are very, very important to make solid spiritual advancement. And that is why spiritual practitioners are always guided not just in the positives of spiritual life in terms of how to develop one's attraction to the Lord, but devotees are also guided in terms of what are those things they should avoid and refrain from, because those things take one away from Krishna and towards a materialistic, sinful way of life. Just like a sick person, when he goes to a doctor, almost for all diseases, the doctor will always give two kinds of treatment. One, the doctor will say, do these things to get cured. Take this medicine. Do this exercise. So there will be certain do's to get cured. And along with that, the doctor will also specifically warn and say, there are certain prohibitions also if you want to get well. If somebody is suffering from high blood pressure, reduce your salt intake or eliminate salt. If one has diabetes, no sugar. Whatever the disease condition, any activity or ahar, any consumption which worsens the condition of the disease should be avoided, isn't it? This is important, isn't it logical? Some people think, oh, spiritual life means one can do whatever one wants as long as one is, worshipping God. But this kind of approach doesn't take one very far. Because the tendency of materialistic enjoyment and the tendency of dedication to the Lord are actually going in opposite direction. You cannot say I'm going to the east, but at the same time I'm going to the west. The more you go towards the east, the further away you are going from the west. Because they are in the opposite directions. So the more one is developing spiritually, the more one is developing attraction to the Lord, the lesser one or the further one is going away from materialistic enjoyment and attraction to materialistic enjoyment. Now, this doesn't in any way mean that one has to go away from an active life or from a social life or from work. No, we are not talking about going away from materialistic life to be interpreted as away from family or not doing job or not doing one's duty. No. We are talking about materialistic life, which means that life where the primary focus is on sensual enjoyment, where one is forgetful of one's real identity as spiritual and is absorbed in a life which is dedicated to material enjoyment. That is called a materialistic life. There's no problem being in a family. There's no problem doing a job. There's no problem having children, bringing them up and doing all your duties. That was Krishna's advice to Arjun. Don't run away. Do. Just transform your consciousness. And that process of transformation of consciousness, yoga karmasu kaushalam, he says that yoga is the art of doing work. And to be able to do that art properly, one must develop attraction to the Lord and develop detachment from that. So Krishna is very clear. And this theme will be maintained by the Lord across the entire Bhagavad Gita. And this is very important for any spiritual practitioner to understand. One cannot take half of the formula and expect success. One cannot say, I will try to develop attraction for the Lord, but I'll keep on the materialistic tendencies. Then one will not get very far. And also the other way around. Simply by detachment from matter, if one doesn't cultivate a positive attraction to the Lord, then also one will not be nourished spiritually. So both these paths are simultaneously very important, and that is why Krishna explains to Arjun, this is the way ahead. So having said that, in the 3rd chapter, in the 4th chapter, the Lord starts explaining about the spiritual knowledge, because knowledge is the basis for this kind of a determination to work for the Lord and to be detached from matter. So in this chapter, Krishna is going to focus on that spiritual knowledge. So the Lord begins this chapter, chapter 4, verse 1. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Imam Vivasvate Yogam Proktavan Aham Avyayam Vivasvan Manave Praha Manur Ikshvakave Bravit. The Lord starts recounting the history of this knowledge of yoga. The Lord tells Arjuna, Arjuna, I am explaining this knowledge of yoga to you. But Arjuna, please understand, this is not the first time I am explaining this knowledge to you. Or rather, to the world. The same knowledge that I just gave you, Arjuna, about the science of yoga, I myself had instructed this exact same knowledge. This eternal knowledge, this imperishable knowledge of yoga to Surya Dev Vivaswan, long back in Satya Yuga. And Vivaswan, the Surya Dev, Vivaswan is the name of Surya Dev, is the name of the person. Surya Dev is the position, the name of the Surya Dev, the current Surya, his name is Vivaswan. And Vivaswan at the beginning of Treta Yuga, gave this knowledge to Vivaswan Manave Praha. He gave this knowledge to Manu, the father of mankind at the beginning of the Manvantar. And Manu, the father of mankind, gave it in turn to his own son, the great king Ikshvaku. Has anybody heard the name Ikshvaku? Can anybody mention in what context you have heard the name Ikshvaku?
Manu's son.
No, that is in this verse, but in the broader Vedic scriptures, with whom is Ikshvaku associated?
With Lord Rama, I guess.
With Lord Ram, correct. Yeah? Ram is a descendant of the Ikshvaku Vansha. Lord Ram is referred to as descendant of Ikshvaku. Lord Ram is also referred to as the descendant of Raghu Vansha, Ikshvaku Vansha, Surya Vansha. These are all descendants, these are all ancestors of Lord Ramchandra. So Krishna is saying, I gave this knowledge. So this knowledge was given to very, very important, prominent people by the Lord long back. Surya Dev is one of the most important personalities. In fact, without Surya, practically the universe will freeze. Such an important personality. And in fact, even for spiritual knowledge, people worship the sun. Yes. We pray to the sun, even through the Surya Gayatri. Please illuminate my intellect with transcendental knowledge. So Krishna gave this knowledge to Surya. And from Surya, through Manu, through Vivaswan, it came down to mankind. So Krishna is saying, I had given that long back. And Krishna arranged in such a way that he gave to all important personalities, because very important, those who are ruling, those who are in positions of great power, they must be convinced about the value of Krishna consciousness, about the knowledge of Gita. Because they have to ensure that they rule according to the principles given in the scriptures. And they also arrange for this knowledge to be systematically disseminated to all mankind. So this was long, long back, at least around 12 million years ago, roughly, as compared to when Arjuna was being instructed with this knowledge. That is when Gita was spoken originally by Krishna, and that is what Krishna is explaining here. And then Krishna goes on to tell the story further, what happened after Ikshvaku. Evam parampara praptam imam rajarshayo viduhu sakale neha mahata yogo nashtaha parantapa. The spiritual science, the supreme knowledge, O Arjun, was handed down not just from Surya to Manu to Ikshvaku, but from Ikshvaku down further, from generations to generations of great saintly kings. And these kings imbibed and practiced this knowledge in their own life and made sure that the whole country was ruled on the basis of this knowledge. So this is also very important. The human society is designed in such a way that the whole purpose of human society, this human form of life, this human life is very distinguished from animal life, because in animal life one doesn't know anything beyond the material sensual desires. Animals are meant for simply material sensual desires. The human life is not meant for that. And that is why scriptures say, if a human being is simply interested in materialistic enjoyment, he is as good as an animal. Dharmena hinaha pashubhi samanaha, Mahabharata says. If a living entity, a human being who has got a human body, is bereft of a higher inquiry, then he's as good as an animal, only that he's running on two legs, searching for material enjoyment. So human society should be organized in such a way that human beings are always focused and never forgetful of the real goal of life. That is why it is very important that the leaders of society be well versed in this knowledge. And when they are well versed, they ensure that the Praja, the Raja has to ensure that the Praja is also properly trained and guided, and they are given all facilities to be both materially and spiritually happy. Of course, material needs are important. Material needs, of course, the king is responsible to provide the necessary protection, the necessary economic development. But they are not the goal of life. They are necessities which need to be managed as the human being, the soul of the human being, is making progress towards the supreme destination. So this knowledge was passed from king to king to king. Raja Rishi, Rajarshayo Viduhu. The word Raja Rishi is used. Because in those days, the kings were not just politicians, they were not just rulers. They were a combination of Raja and Rishi, a sage and a king. Raja Rishi. That is a perfect combination. Evam parampara praptam imam rajarshayo viduhu. The Raja Rishis understood it. Because the Raj Rishis were ruling their kingdom on behalf of God. They were not simply ruling to increase their name, fame, prestige. One name was mentioned in the third chapter, that of Maharaj Janak, if you remember. He was such a great Raja Rishi. And there were so many others. But Krishna says that that knowledge was being passed, but after a particular time, somehow, in due course of time, that knowledge, for some reason, maybe the knowledge was not properly passed, or the next generation was not interested in the knowledge, whatever the reason was, the chain of parampara was broken. Kalena, in due course, yoga nashta paramtapa. That yoga was lost. I had given it, but the whole chain of knowledge was lost. This is a very important principle. Krishna is emphasizing here the principle that spiritual knowledge must be received in a proper parampara. What does parampara mean? A chain. What kind of a chain? Guru to disciple. That disciple to his disciple, to his disciple, and so on, so forth. Knowledge must come down in a Guru Parampara. This is very important. Because Bhagavad Gita is very confidential knowledge. Spiritual knowledge is not a knowledge that you can simply buy a book from the market and read and understand. Because this knowledge is transcendental, it requires active and expert guidance of those who are well versed in the subject. Just knowing English or even Sanskrit is not adequate. People think, oh, I know Sanskrit, I will understand Bhagavad Gita. No. Krishna says, Raja Vidya Raja Guhyam. In the 9th chapter, he says, this is the most secret of all secrets. Do you know Srila Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita translation itself has been distributed on earth more than 1 crore copies. More than 1 crore. Or maybe it is all his books. I do not remember the exact number, but huge. Definitely above 1 crore. And of course, through that, many people have become devotees. But only a small percentage are able to actually understand. Who are able to understand? Who actually come in contact with devotees. Those who come in contact with the devotees along with the book are the ones who understand the book. And that is why Srila Prabhupada was very emphatic when he wanted to share the knowledge of the Bhagavad Gita. He was not just interested in selling the Bhagavad Gita. Srila Prabhupada never wanted that the Bhagavad Gita simply be sold in ordinary bookshops. He was very emphatic that his books must be received from some devotee. Why? Because it is only through the connection in the parampara that one is able to understand the spiritual knowledge by the grace of a devotee who's coming in parampara. And this parampara, if it is traced, it has to go all the way to Krishna, because Krishna is the original source of this knowledge. So even we are receiving this knowledge, whatever we are discussing, we are coming in a direct parampara from Krishna himself. From Lord Krishna to Brahma, from Brahmaji, Narad Muni, from Narad Muni to Vyasadev, from Vyasadev to Madhvacharya, and so on and so forth, coming down in disciplic succession through Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and through Srila Prabhupada to all of us. So when knowledge comes down in such an unbroken disciplic succession, one is assured of two things. One is assured that the knowledge is pure and without any adulteration. One. That there is no misinterpretation or speculation of the knowledge. Some people read Bhagavad Gita but give us some totally wrong explanation. That is why Krishna emphasizes it is not about learning the language, it is about understanding the secret. And that is why in the fourth chapter, we will come to that verse a little later, not today, but in the fourth chapter itself Krishna emphasizes, Arjun, if you want to understand this knowledge, approach a person who is coming in this parampara and who is well versed in the subject, both. Tad viddhi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya upadekshanti te jnanam jnanena tattvadarshina. 4.34. We will discuss that in great detail in one of the subsequent classes. Maybe the next one or the one after that. But this concept is very important. Because we only have in this world the experience of the material sphere, and we are always trying to interpret spiritual reality based on our limited experience of this world. But spiritual truths are beyond the calculation and logic of our material experience. And that is why it requires guidance. And only when a person gets knowledge in this parampara. So one, as I said, the knowledge is unadulterated, it is pure. And second, because this connection is coming directly from the Lord's grace, His kripa is actually flowing through that parampara. In the parampara, each successive guru is actually representing the whole parampara. He is an authorized representative of the Lord on the earth to give this knowledge. And that is why we see that those who actually come in contact with devotees who are in a parampara, they undergo a very clear, positive spiritual transformation. Because they get pure knowledge, unadulterated as it is, the same knowledge as was given by Krishna to Arjun. And second, because of that connection, that authorized connection, they access Krishna's mercy in the same way that Arjuna accessed it personally when Krishna was present on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. It's the same. The power is the same. The message is the same. The transformation can also be the same. It depends on us. If we are as eager and as humble and surrendered as Arjun, we can get the same benefit as Arjun even today, in today's situation, when we hear the Bhagavad Gita from a representative of the Lord who comes in proper parampara. The message has not in any way become weak because of the Lord not being personally present. The Lord is present in the form of His words. And His full power is within His divine instruction. It's very important. So just like a wire, when does a wire have actually power? If you look at a wire, one can see, oh, what is this? This just looks like a thread. What is so great about it? But if you touch it, what happens? If it's a live wire, you'll get a shock. Why? Because unknown to you, if you go on tracing the wire, it will go in your house to one switchboard. From there, it will go to in your building, there'll be a power box and a power meter. And from there, it will go to some power unit and then to some transformers. And finally, all the way back when you trace it, it will connect to the power station where power is being generated. So the wire is live by virtue of its connection. That is why the energy flows. Similarly, devotees who are connected in the parampara and who are receiving message in the parampara are like a live wire. And that is why when we come in contact with them, we get a shock, a live shock, a spiritual shock. We are woken up from our spiritual stupor, our forgetfulness of the Lord, and it gradually awakens in us our love for the Lord. That's why this is very important. And that is why when the chain was broken, this knowledge became again inaccessible. The knowledge became inaccessible not just because the verses were forgotten, because there were no great souls in Parampara who were connected, who lived that knowledge and who could connect others. And that was a great calamity. And Krishna is explaining to Arjuna, Arjuna, this is what happened and the knowledge was lost. The Parampara had to be re-established. And that is the reason, Arjun, I am now again explaining the same knowledge to you. Sa evayam maya te adya yogah proktah puratanah bhaktosi me sakha cheti rahasyam jetaduttamam. That very ancient science of the relationship with the Supreme is being told by me today to you, Arjun. And why I chose you of all the people? Because you are properly qualified. You are my devotee as well as my friend. And that is why you are qualified to properly understand the mystery of this knowledge. Krishna is saying, Arjuna, I wanted to give this knowledge. You are the recipient because you are my devotee. What is the meaning here? The meaning here is that only a devotee can understand the Bhagavad Gita as it is. There are many people who want some form of spirituality, but they are not actually devotees of the Lord. They don't accept the supreme position of the Lord. They come up with some kind of imaginative spiritual understanding. Some say that we all are God. Some say that God is formless. They're not accepting Krishna as he is. And because they're not accepting Krishna as he is, they are unable to understand the mystery of this science. So Krishna says only a devotee can understand. And Krishna has repeated this many times in the Bhagavad Gita. It is not possible to understand this knowledge properly as it is unless a person is a devotee. Those who are not devotees, they are called, technically they are called asura. Asura means demoniac. They reject the authority of the Lord. Such people, even if they are learned in Sanskrit, they will never be able to reach the right conclusion of the knowledge of the Bhagavad Gita. And ultimately, what is the conclusion of the Bhagavad Gita? The conclusion is Sarvadharman parityajya mamekam sharanam vraja ham tvam sarva papebhyo mokshayishyami ma shuchah. To surrender to the Lord in great devotion with great faith. Develop pure devotional service. So when Krishna explains like this to Arjuna, he explains how he started the parampara, then the parampara broke, and because it broke, Krishna wanted to re-establish the parampara. That is why Krishna is now repeating the same message that he had told to Suryadev, now to Arjun, so that the knowledge can continue to be available to the world. When Arjun hears this, Arjun becomes a bit, oh, wow. It's a big thing Krishna mentioned. So Arjun gets a doubt. Because when Arjun gets a doubt, we must understand that Arjun is asking the doubt for our sake. Arjun is actually a great devotee. He knows. He doesn't have a doubt, but he knows that we will doubt. So on our behalf, he is asking. What is he asking? Arjuna uvacha aparam bhavato janma param janma vivasvatah katham etad vijaniyam tvam adau proktavaniti. Oh Krishna, you said you give this knowledge to Vivaswan, but Vivaswan, Surya Dev, is so ancient and old. You appeared on this earth only 100 odd years ago. This is at the time of speaking of the Mahabharata, war. And Krishna was around 100 or so. in that age range. Of course, Krishna never looked old. Krishna always looks like a very young, beautiful boy. A fresh youth, Navayauvanam. He was, but relatively only 100 odd years and Vivaswan. This knowledge, 12 odd million years ago. Krishna, how am I to understand, given the vast difference in the time scale of Vivaswan's appearance and your appearance, that you instructed this knowledge to Surya Dev? I am unable to fathom. Not that I am challenging you. Can you please explain to me how is this possible? How is it possible? So Krishna starts now explaining to Arjuna his position, because Arjuna asked a question to Krishna in such a way as if Krishna were a person like us. Right? Yes, if one of my friends, couple of my very good friends are here. Suyash is here, Amit is here. So in our friendly conversation, if one of them says that, oh, Kamlesh, in my around, I only instructed Shivaji about how to fight 500 years ago. And I will say, you are born now. Shivaji was born in around 500 odd years ago, or 400 odd years ago. How is it possible? It doesn't make sense. So Krishna is happy that Arjuna is asking this question, because Krishna now is going to establish his position to Arjuna by making him understand that, Arjuna, I may seem to be one of you all, but I am not one of you all. I am the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Krishna is going to distinguish himself from those. And this is very important, because Bhagavad Gita is not just a book spoken by some learned man. Bhagavad Gita is not just a book spoken by a self-realized person, a great politician. No, it is spoken by Purushottama, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Bhagavan himself. And Krishna is establishing this. Not just here, throughout the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna repeatedly establishes his supreme position. And it's not that Krishna is saying that out of pride. Oh, I'm so great, Arjuna, I'm so great. No. Krishna has already proven his humility. He has become the chariot driver of his own devotee. So why should we think that Krishna is saying out of pride? No, Krishna has become. How many of us will be so humble that for our best friend will become a driver? The best friend is sitting on the back seat and we are driving the best friend around. You say, hey, क्या कर रहा है? आजा इधर साइड में बैठ, पीछे नहीं बैठने का. मैं ड्राइवर हूँ क्या? Am I a driver? Come and sit next to me. But Krishna is taking the position of a driver of Arjuna. Do you think Krishna is interested in pride or his own recognition or glorification? No, Krishna is extremely humble. But Krishna is explaining his position for our sake, because if we do not recognize him, how will we surrender to him? And if we don't surrender to him, how will we become liberated from suffering, and how will we achieve the supreme destination? So for us, he's revealing this. Krishna has nothing to gain. Krishna is doing this out of compassion. Just like a father and mother, they tell their own child, oh child, please listen to me. Don't listen to others. I am your well-wisher. Whatever I do for you will be for your good. Is that pride or arrogance on part of the parents? No, it is their compassion. It is their love. Krishna is like that. So Krishna starts explaining. What does Krishna say? Krishna starts by saying, very beautifully, he says, Shri Bhagavan Vacha Bahuni Me Vyatitani Janmani tava charjuna tani aham veda sarvani natvam vetha parantapa. Very nice. Krishna says, yes, Arjuna, you have taken many births, and I have also have had many births or appearances. Bahuni me vyatitani janmani tavacha Arjuna. You have had many births, I have had many births, but don't think your birth and my birth are equal. Arjun, you know what is the difference, Arjun? You don't even remember your past births, but I remember each and every appearance of mine in this world. Arjuna, you cannot even remember. What to speak a few years ago? Forget about previous lifetime. What to speak a few years ago? Actually, most of us, even if we were asked exactly at this time, it is now 9:46 p.m. in Malaysia. If I say exactly at 9:46 p.m., what were you doing yesterday? Most of us will have to scratch our head, and most of us will not be able to tell exactly. We may have a rough guess. What do I do typically around this time? Maybe I was on the sofa, maybe I was in the bedroom. What was I doing? Huh? So difficult to remember even one day ago. But Krishna says, Arjun, I remember each and everything, not just of this birth, but of all the previous appearances that I've had. Of course, Krishna is using the word birth because he's trying to compare his appearance with Arjuna's. But Krishna is not being born in the ordinary sense. And he comes to that point and explains in the next few verses. So I will come to that. But Krishna is essentially telling Arjuna, Arjuna, I know all my appearances. But you cannot. That is the prime difference. And Arjuna, do you know why? Of course, it's not mentioned in this verse, but the Acharyas explain that we forget. You know why we forget? We forget because we keep changing bodies. As soon as you change a body, you forget. Of course, some impressions will remain, and deep down there may be some memory, but consciously we will not be able to recollect. The subtle body will have impressions. There are ways to go deep inside and recollect. But fundamentally, once the body changes, one gets more or less disconnected from one's previous existence in terms of the personality, memory, and one takes on a different form. But Krishna remembers everything because Krishna never changes his body. Why? Because Krishna never takes a body like us. Krishna, even when he appears in this world in his various incarnations, he does not take a body which is made of material elements like us. Even though externally it may appear to others around him, oh, he also has a body like me. But Krishna says no. He says, I don't accept a material body. I take many forms. Ramadi Murtishu Kala Niyamena Tishtam Nana Avatar Makarod Bhuvaneshu Kintu Krishna Swayam Samabhavat Parama Pumanyo Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. The Brahma Samhita, Brahmaji is glorifying Krishna by saying that you take so many forms, Rama, Narsingha, Vamana, so many forms. But all these forms, O Lord, even though they are Nana Avatar, they're all different forms of that same Krishna. The shape may be different, but the person is the same and is the same body. God never changes body. He takes his own spiritual form. He may change his shape and form and features externally, but his body is always eternal. And that is why the Lord is known as Achyuta. Achyuta means he never makes mistakes, he never fails because he is always perfect. His body is always Satchit Ananda. And that is why sometimes the Lord is also known as Advaita. Advaita means Advaitam Achyutam Anadim Ananta Rupa Madhyam Purana Purusham Navayauvanam Cha Vedeshu Durlabam Adurlabam Atma Bhaktau Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. Advaita means there is no difference or duality between his body and his soul. For us, if somebody says, "Who are you? Am I this body?" No, I'm not the body. I am the soul which is inside this body, isn't it? So we have a body and we have a soul. Actually, we don't have a soul, we are the soul, but the soul is in the body. But when Krishna appears in any of his incarnations or he comes personally, there are no two things. There is no Krishna's body and Krishna's soul. In God, there is no body and soul, because his whole form is spiritual. This is a very wonderful understanding. And Krishna explains this very point in the next verse, 4.6. He says, Ajopi san avyayatma bhutanam ishwaropi san prakritim swam adhisthaya sambhavami atma mayaya. Arjuna, I am unborn, I am never born, even though I appear to be born. And my spiritual body never goes through any decay, like the material body goes through decay. And I'm actually the Lord of all living entities. I'm not one of the living entities. I'm not one of the created beings. I'm the Lord. Bhutanam Ishvara. I'm the Lord of all living entities. But even then, using my spiritual energy, Atma Mayaya, by my internal spiritual energy, I appear again and again in different forms in this world. My body never deteriorates. My body never changes. Avyayatma. Avyay means iska vyaya nahi, which doesn't undergo any change or exhaustion or deterioration. Ajopi san avyayatma bhutanam ishwaropi san prakritim swam adhisthaya. Being situated in my spiritual nature, I appear in this world. So Krishna says, Arjun, my appearance is spiritual, it is not material. I am not forced to accept a material body like other living entities. Krishna comes in his own Swarupa, his own spiritual form, by his internal energy. Of course, Krishna's Swarupa, ultimately the original spiritual form of Krishna of God is that of Krishna. 2 arms having a flute. This is what the Bhagavad explains. Of all the forms of the Lord, Krishna is the original. Ete chamsha kala pumsa krishnastu bhagavan swayam. Bhagavad says, this is not my opinion. I'm just quoting the Srimad Bhagavad. And that is why, because the Lord is spiritual in form, that's why he doesn't go through old age the way living entities undergo old age. He always looks young. It is said, in fact, when the Lord was on the earth, he was here for around 125 years. He never looked beyond 24 years of age, no matter how much time was spent on the planet. In fact, sometimes scriptures, the Bhagavad actually gives a beautiful verse, a comparison where it is said, the Lord's coming into this world and going away from this world to our eyes may seem like birth and death, but actually, it is just like the rising and the setting of the sun. Very interesting comparison. Just think about it. When the sun rises, does it mean that the sun is born? And when the sun sets, does it mean that the sun has died? Of course not. The sun existed before the sunrise and it continues to exist after sunset. It's only that before sunrise, the sun was not visible to us. And after sunset also, is no longer visible to us. Similarly, Krishna in his spiritual form eternally exists in the spiritual world. He rises in this world as an incarnation. And when the time comes, he sets this world and appears somewhere else, in either the same form or in a different form. It's a very beautiful comparison given in the scriptures. Like the rising and the setting of the sun. Very beautiful. Please remember this very beautiful example. And that is why Krishna, he showed, even when Krishna, in this appearance, we've discussed this a couple of times recently, when Krishna appeared in this world, he was not born in the normal, typical way. He was in the womb of Devaki for the purpose of Leela, but he appeared outside the womb of Devaki suddenly. She didn't go through labor pain and she didn't give birth the normal, typical way. The Lord appeared outside suddenly. And not only did he appear outside, he immediately appeared outside into a four-armed Narayan form. Then he transformed himself into a small baby. All this is showing what? That Krishna's body is not material. He's coming in his original spiritual form. And in all situations, that is because Krishna never changes his body. It's not that Krishna is weak when he's a baby and then he becomes strong when he grows up. Krishna was as strong when he was apparently a newborn baby. That's why even practically days after his birth, he killed Putana. He killed Shakatasur within the few days or months of his appearance. Trinavartana, there's so many demons the Lord killed when he was so young. He was almost a baby. How is that possible? Because Krishna, in the battlefield of Kurukshetra, or Krishna who's a tiny baby, spiritually there's no difference. There may be a difference in the rasa because of the manifestation, but it is the same supreme person, fully knowledgeable, fully cognizant, full of the six opulences in all situations, all the time. There is no differentiation between his self and his body. So very beautiful. So Krishna explains, but then one may ask, oh, really? Krishna rises and then he sets and he goes from universe to universe, but why does he come in this world? And that is why Krishna starts explaining probably the most famous verses in the Bhagavad Gita, the next two verses. Yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bhavati bharata abhyutthanam adharmasya tadatmanam srajamyaham paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya cha dushkrutam dharma sansthapanarthaya sambhavami yuge yuge. I've recited both 7th and 8th verse together so that we can discuss both of them together. It's almost 10, so we will end with that. So Krishna says, he explains why he appears in this world. He appears in this world not because he has to gain something. He's appearing in this world, like what we discussed earlier, out of his own compassion for all of us. Because the Lord wants that on earth proper dharmic principles are followed, because the whole purpose of human life is to follow dharma and achieve spiritual perfection. But if dharma is lost, everything is lost. The whole human form of life is spoiled. So Krishna is very particular that dharma is always there on earth. And those who are saintly are protected, and those who are demoniac, those who disturb the saintly people, are subdued and or destroyed as the situation requires. That is why he says, whenever and wherever there is a decline in religious principles and there is a increase of religion, I come into the world to re-establish dharma, to crush religion and to bring religion back up again. I descend myself in such a situation. What do I do when I descend? I protect the devotee sadhu. What is the meaning of the word sadhu? Those who are devotees, those who are devoted to the Lord, the Sura. Vishnu Bhakta Smrita Daiva Asura Tadviparyayaha. Those who are devotees of the Lord are the Devatas of the Sura. And the Asuras are those who are against those who are devoted to the Lord. So the Lord comes, he protects the devotees and he subdues the demons. And he re-establishes the principles of religion, like what he's doing now. It is telling Arjuna, Arjuna, I had given this knowledge long back, but I'm coming back and re-establishing this knowledge now by re-establishing the parampara, by explaining this knowledge to you. Sambhavami, I appear. Yuge, yuge, not just once. I come again and again and again, whenever and wherever such a situation arises. Sometimes the Lord will send his representatives. Sometimes when the situation needs and when the Lord wants to reveal his pastime and his divine forms, the Lord comes personally. In fact, the great acharyas explain that of course the Lord can always empower others to do this. It's not that God has to come himself, but God on certain occasions prefers to come himself in his spiritual form, because by doing so, within this world, he reveals his identity to us. He reveals his beautiful forms to us. He creates such pastimes that he gives us subject matters, spiritual subject matters to talk about. He has made it possible that we have Ramayana and Mahabharata that we can relish, and the basis of which we are able to remember, recollect, and become attached to him. If we didn't have Ramayana, if we didn't have Mahabharata, if we didn't have the Srimad Bhagavad, we just had some abstract idea of God, it would be so difficult to focus and be attached to God. So the Lord is revealing, he's being kind, he's revealing his identity to us. And most of all, the top reason is because there are so many devotees in this world who are hankering for the association of the Lord. The Lord wants to give them his affection and his shelter by appearing in this world. For example, Vasudeva and Devaki, they were crying out for the Lord. So he came. Kamsa could have been killed by Krishna's agent also. Krishna could have arranged it like that if he wanted to. But Krishna chose it to do it himself. And that is why the Lord descends into this world. And that is why the word avatar is used. Avatar means avatri, to come down. Avatar. Of course, there are many, many categories of avatars. These categories are explained in the scriptures. There is the Purusha avatars, Guna avatar, Leela avatar, Shaktiavesh avatar, Manvantara avatars, Yuga avatars. 6 categories of avatars are there. We're not going to that discussion today. You can read that on the types of avatars in the book Teachings of Lord Chaitanya. There it is explained in detail. Maybe someday we can discuss that in detail. But Krishna is the original source of all incarnations. He is the original Supreme Personality of Godhead. So I will take a pause with that. Yeah, I think the next verse I can discuss next time will be a good summarization of what we have discussed. So we can start from 4.9. 4.9 is also a very sweet verse. 4.9 actually concludes this subsection, but we will take it next time because in that way we can quickly refresh ourselves about what we discussed today. Okay, so I will stop at this point at 4.8. We have ended 4.8. So I'm opening up the floor if there is any comment or question.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. I'm Mihira.
Yes, Mihira.
Prabhuji, I actually have a question which is not related to this part. The 2 doorkeepers of Lord Vishnu were cursed to have 3 lifetimes on the earth. And they were born as asuras. So when they were killed by the god, by Lord, will they get karma, the punishments or rewards for their actions after their
after their third birth, they went back to the spiritual world. Yeah. So of course, whoever is killed by the Lord, they become purified of their sins. So yes, every time they were killed in the previous incarnation, they were purified. But the scriptures say if one is killed by Krishna himself, then one immediately goes back. One becomes immediately free from the cycle of birth and death. If not, otherwise one can become free from karma and free from one's sinful activities and achieve an auspicious destination. So that is why in the third life, when they were killed by Krishna himself, that is where they returned to their original position.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Okay, anything else? Okay, great. Okay, so I would like to thank you all very much. Grantara Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada, Jai, Samaveta Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki